Well, folks, after another brief break of vacation, folks, we welcome you folks back, and good evening, WNBA and women's basketball fans, and welcome into the WNBA 365 Network, your comprehensive home for all things WNBA and women's basketball related. All right, folks, tonight, first show back post our vacation break, and again, grateful for you folks to be joining us back here on the program this evening as we get ready and get underway with the crunch time edition of the program as we do, in fact, approach the end of the 2017 WNBA regular season and approach the 2017 WNBA playoffs. Good evening, folks. Welcome into tonight's Monday edition of the program here on WNBA 365. Cal McClure joining you folks tonight solo for the next hour. Again, folks, want to again clarify real quick again, folks, that again we are coming at you folks about an hour and a half earlier than we were expected to tonight. Again, we are, of course, as you know, not only dealing with the hiatus problem coming up in a couple of weeks, but also trying to somewhat experiment, play around a little bit and see what works and what's not going to work for us going forward as we do, in fact, approach the postseason. So, again, trying out at 8 o'clock Pacific time start time, again, 11 o'clock back east. Again, just trying to, trying to see what works and what doesn't work in our case here. Again, folks, Cal McClure back with you folks, and welcome in, and again, folks, as well, welcome back in to the Calamac Sports Studios here in San Diego. Again, grateful to be back with you folks after, again, being away for the past couple of weeks, again, fulfilling some obligations up in Northern California and trying to enjoy the last part of my vacation before the announcing seasons do begin. We try to get our good friend Crystal Thomas, battling some technical problems tonight, so she couldn't be in, but we do have her in the chat box at least here this evening. Of course, folks, you can get involved with the program via Facebook, Twitter, live chat box, what have you, facebook.com/WNBA365, or find us on Twitter at WNBA365, at Calamac3, or use the hashtag WNBA365, or, of course, you can write in to the live chat box as well and get your opinions, questions, comments, or concerns put out as well here this evening. Folks, again, going to go over some of the news with teams, get to the games on Tuesday, and, of course, bring you up to date, too, with what is going to be happening, too, with the programming once the hiatus does begin on September 1st. But also, folks, again, and also we will have a pretty big program alert for you folks for tomorrow night as well during the back half of our program here this evening. But again, grateful as usual, folks, to have you joining us here tonight. Folks, quickly, first to the Players of the Week awards for the WNBA, given up to Tina Charles for the 26th time this season. TC's gotten the award, and Brianna Stewart for the Western Conference from the Seattle Storm. Obviously, folks know a lot of bombshells landed and exploded while we were, of course, on our last vacation period, of course, with the firing of Jenny Busek in Seattle. We'll start, though, with Stewie and the Storm. And obviously, folks, as we look at this, again, I kind of went back in the vaults and the archives of the network and watched some of the old shows that we had done here. And I went back to July 21st, when the Sparks had relieved Carol Ross of her duties back 2-3 seasons ago, and somewhat wondering about what this would do or what it would do for the Sparks at that point. Obviously, they brought in a GM, or their GM and vice president, of course, who had no coaching experience. And in this case, though, with the Storm, obviously, Jenny Busek, longtime coach in Sacramento. But, though, firing her but bringing in Gary Kloppenberg. Now, again, Klopp, obviously, a good friend of mine, his daughter, his two daughters, good friends of mine. One of them played at Point Loma Nazarene University. The other one doing a lot of exceptional community work in the San Diego community with challenged athletes. And, we've seen Gary in his time in Tulsa, obviously a bit rough with that team in 2013, of course, with Diggins in her rookie season, Candace Wiggins somewhat at the back end, midway through her career somewhat, and what have you, of course, dealing with, and also having Liz Cambage on that roster. Been an assistant the past couple years in Indiana with Los Angeles, and now somewhat, I think, for him probably mentally going from the assistant coach's chair back to the head coaching position. Something with this Storm team just did this overnight out of the blue, and seeing what Seattle has done, bad stretches of games, and seeing them pull themselves back in the mix again. Klopp undefeated so far in his time as being the interim coach. Now they're back in the playoff mix right now. They would face Phoenix in the first round. I mean, for a team to somewhat make that adjustment, or those adjustments, I think, so quickly under, a coach coming in, 2/3 of the way, 3/4 of the way down the stretch run in the season, obviously. We saw with what it did to Los Angeles in 2014 or 2015, for that matter, even after firing Ross in 2014, I should say 2014, and seeing, obviously they struggled a bit, like under Penny Toller, got a couple wins, but again, they went 500 down the stretch of those last 6 games, got in the playoff mix, and yes, lost to Minnesota in the first round. But normally, I don't think, though, folks, in sports, any level that you can, fire a coach or get rid of a coach, bring someone else in there and hope or get these kind of, instant results from a team as quickly. And the Storm have really done a good job turning around. And also we've seen with how Stewie's played and how Sue Bird has also played lately, approaching the assist record held by Tichi Panachero. And again, of how they've been able to pull themselves out of the mud and fray, and they've gotten back on track. And it's been very good to see. 14 and Charles in the New York Liberty. Obviously, Charles, the 26th time she has won Player of the Week honors. And again, I mean, I don't know, folks, if we can continue to somewhat bang the drum or beat the drum. But all this is good and all for New York. Obviously, scuffling a bit earlier on in the season, or most recently, I think. But getting back on track in a way, though, getting back in the middle part of the pack right now. Though, I think still of how much does Tina Charles have left in the gas gauge. Now, again, 26 time, though, folks, I believe it's a new record, though. And obviously, for 26 weeks, weeks so far, Tina Charles has brought her lunch pail to work every day, and she has absolutely just balled out and has played out of her mind. Again, 26 time she's won Player of the Week honors, and that is something I think that is very special that, I know team awards or individual awards don't have as much bearing or weight as in regards to team achievements or team awards. And still, though, that still was pretty freaking amazing. And 26 times winning Player of the Week honors, good for TC, and also good for Stewie as well. Again, Charles and Stewart, your Eastern Conference and Western Conference Players of the Week. Folks, to the news front first, the Dallas Wings today, the league has announced, this is also reported and confirmed by our good buddy David Siegel from Dishin' and Swishin' on Twitter, Glory Johnson has been suspended for the Wednesday game versus Connecticut after punching Dream player Mati Ajivan in the last game that Dallas played over the weekend. And obviously, folks, Glojo obviously very frustrated, upset, pissed off about this. Did a pretty good number on the WNBA on Instagram today. Even had the video evidence of what was going on before this happened, of course. And folks, in my time working in professional sports, working in hockey specifically the past 3 years, and for that matter, the past 7 years or 5 years for that matter, my whole career I've been in hockey in some capacity. I've come to grips and come to know, folks, that game officials, specifically sometimes in basketball, more so in hockey, even football for that matter, they miss the first call, but 9 times out of 10, folks, what do? They normally and usually always call retaliation. So if you don't want to get suspended, get up, or what have you, don't retaliate for that matter, because now obviously that is tough to do, though, in the pressure of the moment and in the in that moment of time. But I think that the best way, though, to not have to face the consequences or the wrath of that matter from the league is hold it in check, maybe, and maybe talk to the player after the game. I know that's probably a very far-fetched idea, but I think, though, folks, that specifically hockey games, even in basketball and in football, is normally the referees normally call retaliation. And I actually have no problem, folks, with Glory Johnson expressing her mind, putting the video out, here's the evidence, show me the money. They put the video out there, and there is the video footage on Glojo's account. But again, she is suspended for tomorrow's game against the Sun, again, for punching Mati Ajivan over the weekend between the Dallas Wings and the Dream. Crystal Thomas in the chat box, he says, I think Ajivan should have possibly been either fined or suspended as well. I think Glory got the rap for it because of her past. Obviously, Crystal, I think hit the nail on the head right there. Now, at least, again, comparing apples to oranges, folks, again, from my time being in the penalty box during hockey games is sometimes they will call the first player for a penalty or call for an infraction while also giving the other player something. Crystal, I think, though, that you're right, though, that maybe there should have been some type of similar, or I think there should have also been another consequence handed down for the player, too, for getting away with it. I think as well, because they were egging on the player to retaliate afterwards. So obviously, Ajivan possibly a fine, suspension, I agree. But again, to see, Glojo get the brunt, get the short end of the stick, and again, she gets suspended. Ajivan gets off scot-clean. problem right there for the WNBA. But again, folks, once more, Gloria Johnson, Dallas Wings, suspended for Wednesday's game due to, again, striking Mattia Ajavon of the Atlanta Dream over the past, over the weekend between those two teams. The Indiana Fever folks have lost their third guard of the season due to injury. Breanne January now out for the remainder of the season. She joined Shanice Johnson and Tiffany Mitchell. In wake of the injury, the Dream did use the emergency hardship exception to sign Jenny Simmons to a contract. Simmons was a draft pick of Washington out of Old Dominion a couple seasons ago. And, folks, for the Indiana Fever, obviously a pretty disappointing season for a team that had such an amazing track record and a very impressive streak, folks. Somewhat, in a way, they were like, they were the WNBA's version, folks, of the Atlanta Braves of baseball, how the Braves had 16 straight division titles and won the World Series once. Similar situation for the Fever, a long 10, 12-year period of going into the playoffs, getting one championship out of it in 2012. But this year, obviously, big transition year, losing Stephanie White to the job at Vanderbilt. Pokey Chapman comes in, and also the first year post-Mia Catchings. Obviously, you think back to that game where they got absolutely manhandled and torn to shreds by the Minnesota Lynx a couple games ago in St. Paul. And we knew it. I think we knew it would be somewhat of a transition, but I don't think we would see, or we would envision seeing the Fever, in shambles as much as they have been this year, folks. They have been eliminated from the postseason mix over the weekend. And obviously, the injury factors, too, for Johnson, Mitchell. Now, January goes down for the third injured player on the Fever roster. Tough break for the Fever, and obviously, those postseason streaks are tough to come by and hang on to. But obviously, wishing the best to Shanice, to Tiff, and also as well to January as well for the injury for those three players for the Fever. The San Antonio Stars, folks, who visit Los Angeles tomorrow night, have signed Sierra Burdick for the remainder of the season. She was on a 7-day contract. That was in wake of the Stars waiving Erica De Souza. Obviously, ladies and gentlemen, the Stars have somewhat improved, I think, in areas recently. I know that, of course, they have somewhat been the doormat again this year. That 0-14 plus start for the season for them has been a very tough pill to swallow for the Stars. But I think, though, that even in spite of that start, folks, there's been, I think, at least recently in recent games, there's been a lot of really good positive talking points with this Stars team. And I think we all knew, though, that this was not going to be their year, I think, for anything this year in regards to it. But Erica De Souza, folks, being a player that I think has meant a lot to Atlanta, of course, for her time there during those the three finals appearances that they made. She was a big part of that. And trying to be a veteran leader in Chicago and in San Antonio this past season. Obviously, body says no, mind says yes, or vice versa. And Erica stepping away to somewhat, say, hey, enough's enough for me. You guys are in good hands. No need for me to continue to hang around here and to improve on that. But for Burdick, for a player that we've seen kind of, pinball, ping pong for that matter, on and off rosters. Los Angeles was a final cut for the Sparks during her rookie season. Went to Atlanta, had a couple of good showings. New York for a bit this year, now in San Antonio. I think, though, this is a way that the Stars kind of continue to keep that they continue to add, that they add more to their young nucleus between Plum and Wnba and all the players that we talk about night in and night out. So what does this do for San Antonio? It gives them another way to look forward towards next season for sure. And also to kind of see, again, much like we're doing here with our start time, is, again, what works and what doesn't work for the panel, or what works for the viewers out there. But for the Stars, though, and also for Vicky Johnson, though, folks, again, who obviously we know was, criticized pretty heavily, laughed at, I think, too, for some of the lineup rotations, but I think has somewhat, while, learning on the fly of becoming a head coach, of what has worked and what has not worked. And Burdick's thing there, I think, I think for once gives CB, a team that she can probably stay on for maybe longer than what we've seen in her career between, last cut in Los Angeles a couple years ago, a few games in Atlanta, a couple of weeks in New York, and then the 7-day contract with San Antonio. So probably a team that I think that Birdie probably stays on for maybe longer than just 2 weeks or a week for that matter, and perhaps they're hopefully long-term for Sierra Burdick going forward. But again, folks, to revisit the big news of the day once more. Again, Tina Charles, New York Liberty. Brandon Stewart, Seattle Storm. Players of the week for the past week. Dallas Wings player. Glory Johnson suspended for Wednesday's game versus Connecticut after punching with T. Ajivon over the weekend. The Fever have ruled out Brianne January for the remainder of the season. She joins both Shanice Johnson and also joins Tiffany Mitchell as the three players who are both out for the season due to injury. And the Stars have signed Sierra Burdick for the remainder of the 2017 regular season after signing her first to a 7-day contract. All right, folks, some big news from the network again. Now, again, folks, as a reminder once more, we are running out of time for us being on the network here again. As a reminder, once more, again, program hiatus begins on September 1st on Friday. We'll be off air for an extended period of time. But, folks, we are trying we're trying something out here, though, folks, to somewhat experiment. Now, again, we came here, folks, an hour and a half early tonight, judging by a tweet from a good viewer of ours. Forget his actual name. I think it's Brian Schwartz is his name, again, who said, clearly, buddy, if it's after 12:30 Eastern time, I'm not really interested in watching. So we're again not really taking that, not taking that tweet as as a knock on the network. But again, but in a way though, folks, giving me main guy here for this network again to see what works and what doesn't work. So taking Brian's advice, we again came here about an hour and a half earlier tonight at about 8 o'clock local time here. Again, about 11 o'clock back east. And again, we apologize for that, folks. But again, for the next couple of days and a couple of shows here, we're going to be working on trying to improve our start time for not just myself and for whoever else joins us on the program, but also for you folks. And again, I do kind of feel bad a little bit, or actually a lot, because I'm so far behind the East Coast, and a majority of our viewers are from the Midwest or from the East Coast or what have you, and our start times just don't really do this very well, or they don't coincide, or they don't do this for everyone. And again, we're trying our best to pull out all the stops so that we can, not only accommodate ourselves here on the program, but also accommodate you viewers too, because we, of course, would not be here without you folks. So again, we're trying our best to, again, experiment, see what does work and what does not work. With that in mind, following tomorrow's game between the Stars and Sparks, again, I'm making a making a trip to Los Angeles tomorrow for a networking event I'm going to, and maybe having a chance to stop at the game tomorrow. But we'll be in LA for the course of the day tomorrow. And Crystal Thomas and myself, folks, are actually going to try our best to give you about a 15-minute little post-game social stream of the game, post-game tomorrow, maybe at halftime or maybe before the game. But we're trying our best, folks, to extend another bridge, I guess, for our social platforms, at least either before the game tomorrow, during the game tomorrow, maybe even afterwards tomorrow, perhaps, depending on, of course, time, because that, of course, is what depends on all that. Again, I'm going to be in Los Angeles for a separate event tomorrow, being held up there for some sports broadcasters, and then possibly we'll make it to the game tomorrow. Maybe we'll see what does happen out of that whole ordeal tomorrow. But again, but right now, folks, we are actually running a poll question right now that I'm actually going to retweet right now on the network Twitter handle. We actually had it stopped for 10:30 this evening because we're trying our best. That was for our original start time before we shake things up. But again, so for what we're going to call right now is the 365 social stream. So we're going to be calling it right now. We want you folks to vote. We just retweeted the question on our Twitter handle. Facebook Live, Instagram Live, or a Twitter live stream, folks. So again, give us your votes. We'll close that poll off at 10 o'clock tonight or 9 o'clock tonight when the show does go off air this evening. But again, cast your votes. I know it says 2 hours left if you're on the Twitter handle right now, but it's going to actually end for our program, at least at 9 o'clock this evening local time. So again, please do that. So again, we're also, again, folks, trying our best while we are on hiatus. This is somewhat going to be like our alternate channel, much like for our great Merc fans in Phoenix. I know that you have games on Fox Sports Arizona Plus. This is going to kind of like become our alternate channel and alternate feed for the network. We can't come to you folks as often as we like to here on YouTube. We'll have a backdoor, like a separate bridge extended, so you folks can still get your inside scoop to the WNBA and the women's basketball world via like a side door, basically, for the most part. But again, you can cast your votes though on our Twitter handle. Again, that's at WNBA365. Find those results, or find the poll question, I should say, and give us your questions, comments, or concerns on that aspect. right now. But again, we're going to attempt to do this again, folks. But again, experiment, but first ever or inaugural 365 social stream, either before, during, or after tomorrow's game between the Sparks and Stars will come your way either on Facebook, on IG, or live on Twitter. We'll have more about that for you folks when we get more details about this. Chris and I are going to talk about this off air when we do end this program sometime this evening. Folks, there are 2 games on your schedule tomorrow outside of what we're doing here in the network, but tomorrow as well. Merck and Lynx, 5 o'clock from the Excel Energy Center in St. Paul, Minnesota, and of course the Stars and Sparks at 7:30 p.m. tomorrow night. Those are the 2 games tomorrow for the game for the WNBA tomorrow as a whole. With that, folks, actually, with this being a solo-hosted show and not much else to get to, we may actually call this off at 8:30, folks. We're actually going to do that, actually. So scratch everything I just said. 8:30 p.m. will be when we're going to go off air this evening. Again, with this being a solo-hosted program, we're also going to be working on some things. But again, folks, a reminder once more, again, to just kind of rehash all this real quick again. But either pregame tomorrow, halftime tomorrow, postgame, or maybe even all 3 tomorrow. Again, we're going to, myself and Crystal Thomas are going to try our best to do a 365 social stream, which again is going to serve more so, folks, as again another, basically an alternate viewing, an alternate channel, basically to somewhat be a carbon copy almost of the channel itself here, folks. But again, we're going to attempt to do either pregame, halftime, or also postgame, or maybe even all 3 tomorrow at some point. Be about a 15-minute get-together, go live and chat things over with you folks, either about the game or what have you. Again, we'll have more about that. Again, folks, I'm going to be in LA tomorrow for a networking event with some media folks in Los Angeles. And again, possibly could be at this game tomorrow. We'll see what does occur out of it with that tomorrow. But again, folks, I guess to rehash the big news of the day once more, Tina Charles of the New York Liberty and Brianna Stewart of the Seattle Storm named your conference players of the week. Again, Glory Johnson, folks, was suspended 1 game for, again, striking Dream player Mattia Ajiban over the weekend. She got a 1-game suspension. She'll serve that suspension starting on Wednesday. The Fever will be without Bree in January for the remainder of the season, as Bree is also out. She joins both Shanice Johnson and Tiffany Mitchell as the other 3 players who are all out for the remainder of the season due to injuries. And the San Antonio Stars, again, signed Sierra Burdick for the remainder of the 2017 season to a final season contract for Burdick here today. And that's all the big news for the WNBA today. Again, no games. And again, folks, also to backtrack real quick again. But again, folks, when we do come back on Wednesday and Thursday of this week, again, folks, we are going to, again, be messing around with our times again. We came here again, folks, about an hour and a half early tonight to, again, see what the response would be from the fans so far. Viewers have been about between 3, 5, maybe 8 people. So, again, we're going to work all those kinks out, folks. But again, cannot stress enough, folks, but starting on September 1st, once more, again, folks, all programming will cease operation for an unknown amount of time, again, due to myself getting back to work with my actual jobs, again, down here in San Diego. But from time to time, folks, when we can't be on this channel again, look for us to be more social, I guess, with our social streams. And again, that will be either on Facebook Live, on our IG story, or live streaming on our Twitter handle. Again, we'll have more about that in a forthcoming press release probably later this evening, maybe even after the show does go final. Okay, folks, I think we're actually going to call it right here. Obviously, probably not the best of nights, again, with no games tonight. But again, folks, be on the lookout again tomorrow for our first of maybe of many new 365 social streams starting up again tomorrow, either before, during, or after, maybe even all 3 after the Sparks and Stars get together from Staples Center tomorrow night. Again, folks, again, could be at the game tomorrow, depending on what does happen with me. Going to a couple of events up in Los Angeles tomorrow. We'll see what does occur out of it here this evening. But with that, folks, thanks for tuning in and dropping in. And again, we are glad to be back with you folks here. And again, we will be back, though, in studio back here on Wednesday and Thursday. Again, start times are to be determined right now. Please stay tuned to our Facebook page or Twitter handles for more information about start times and what have you. With that, folks, we'll see you back here tomorrow for our first of many coming up 365 social streams, and back here in studio at least on Wednesday and Thursday for more exciting WNBA 365 network programming. Folks, take care. Good night. Bye-bye.